If you're going to play this game, you better know your customer's business. Outcome-based pricing is a subset of value-based pricing, where an outcome is explicitly defined with a customer. For example, a certain level of uptime. And then the price paid varies over time based on performance against those outcomes. Historically, outcome-based pricing is not often used because of the difficulty of agreeing on measurement and enforcing payment. With current IT, however, that's less of a problem, and more firms seem to be at least investigating it. Outcome-based pricing can be outstanding at aligning supplier and buyer efforts in pursuit of common objectives. Welcome to Value and Pricing Secrets. My mission here is to help you improve your thinking about how to value and price your offerings. Before we move on, let me respectfully ask for your support. My commitment is to bring you world-class value and pricing content on this channel. If you want more, I need you to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the only way YouTube can understand that you value this content and want more of it.
As you will hear me say again and again and again, the primary reason companies focus on pricing is to improve their profitability. Simply put, profits improve with more sophisticated pricing models. In particular, shifting from cost-based to value-based pricing can triple net income, even more. Outcome-based pricing has potentially even greater income impact because it explicitly ties the price you are paid to the outcome you deliver. You and your customer are in the same boat, paddling together for the same measurable outcome. In other words, you are strategic partners for success. As you're probably aware, there are three basic pricing models: cost-based pricing, market-based pricing, or sometimes known as competitor-based pricing, and value-based pricing, with outcome-based pricing being a subset of value-based pricing. Now, pricing models are typically characterized by their overall approach to solving the pricing question, the kind of information that's required for fueling decision-making, and finally, the rules that are required to achieve success. In this video, we'll be talking specifically about outcome-based pricing. If you haven't viewed the video on value-based pricing, I recommend that you stop here and go back and watch that video because this one is built on the foundation that's laid in value-based pricing. As I said, outcome-based pricing is a subset of value-based pricing, and the strengths and weaknesses of outcome-based pricing are largely the same as those of value-based pricing. So to understand outcome-based pricing, let's start with what it is really. And it's really value-based pricing as applied to a single customer. But not just that. At this single customer, the price that you are paid is tied explicitly to performance. So you get paid based on your performance for that customer. So the approach is to collaborate with that customer to estimate what an expected outcome is for implementing your product or service, and then to define a price metric that is the measure of the delivery of that outcome. And then once you agree on that, then agree with the customer on a formula for payment based on that metric. What's the necessary information? Well, for you as the supplier, you really need deep knowledge of the customer's business. You need confidence in your ability to perform, and you need confidence in the customer's willingness and ability to pay if you deliver based upon the agreed performance. What is the rule for success? You deliver on the agreed outcome and get paid according to the terms of the agreement. And typically, this is a strategy-driven kind of model, and specifically strategy related to an individual customer. Now, let's compare value-based pricing versus outcome-based pricing. With value-based pricing, you control the value delivered. You control it with your offering design, the packaging of the product, plus the services, plus anything else that might be included. With outcome-based pricing, yes, you control all those, but then you agree on value delivered and how to measure it with the customer. With value-based pricing, you control the value that gets acknowledged. That is, through your sales and your communications program, you have the ability to communicate that value to customers. When it comes to outcome-based pricing, you explicitly agree with the customer on the value that they acknowledge they will receive, and that becomes the basis for your payment. And finally, with value-based pricing, you set a value-based price. In outcome-based pricing, you agree with the customer on a price formula tied to a predefined value or price metric. Let's take a look now at an anonymized case study of a project I worked on. SalesMax was a proven leader in sales systems designed for car dealerships. They were bringing a new version of their software to market, and they needed to decide on a pricing strategy. So to do that, SalesMax historically employed value pricing for its systems and adjusted its price based on the number of dealer locations that a particular dealer network had. More locations, the higher the price. Now, still hurting from the Great Recession of the 2008 to 2012, many of these owners wanted SalesMax to up its game and share the risk. So SalesMax considered implementing an outcome-based pricing approach and committed to researching both the potential and the associated risks. So in order to do that, we developed a model of what an outcome-based pricing approach might look like. And then we implemented a research methodology where we did an online survey of 200 North American dealers, where we explicitly talked to decision makers that were responsible for this. So these could be sales managers, these could be owners, etc. The approach we took was using an experimental trade-off research design. Trade-off research is particularly useful in pricing because it permits you to test alternative options, price, and offering options. And so it forced respondents to choose between multiple feature options at different price points. Look at it this way. You can't simply ask people, well, are you willing to pay a higher price? Because they'll always say no. Price is one element of the marketing mix that is unidirectional. Customers always want it to be less. So we use this research input that we received from these 200 North American dealers to create an economic model of the North American dealer market. So this is the outcome of trade-off research. You build economic models that you can use to test your alternative approaches. That enabled us to project market share and revenues for different offerings and different pricing strategies. And then we tested all of those price levels and offering structures. So we evaluated alternative pricing strategies. The first one we evaluated was a single price. It was site-based. And the core, where the core offering was sold as a single price per site, and the options were sold as a single price per site. And the range of prices we tested were from $800 per month to $4,100 per month. And options could be up to 40% of the overall offering price, or we also tested prices 30% less than the overall offering price. So we tested multiple options, and one of them was to test per car sold, which is outcome based. That is, the core and option prices were set based on the number of cars sold. For example, $20 per car. And we tested alternative prices anywhere from $10 to $40 per car sold to determine the price that they would pay for the offering and the bundle that they wanted to buy of the core offering plus options. So what were the economic model outputs? Well, what the economic model showed us is that if we used a single price that was site-based, the optimized price was $2,300. And if we did that, we could have 587 core clients, and 499 of those would also buy a package of options. And the revenues that were generated, the core plus those options, was $59 million. There was a second option we tested where the core number of potential clients jumped all the way to 751, but the options decreased to 398. And that was actually better and generated a total revenues of 68 million. But when we tested the per car sold, the outcome-based pricing, when we tested from if they sold 0 to 100 cars, then the price they paid would be $25 per car. If they sold 100 to 200 cars, then the price would be $15 per car. And if they sold 201 or more cars, the price would be $10 per car. When we used that pricing model, then the core number of sales was 680 and the number of option sales was 593. So you can see the number of potential clients grew by close to 20% based on that pricing model. And as a result of that pricing model, which generated more revenues per unit sold, plus more customers, the total revenues jumped to $112 million. Basically, what customers were saying is that if you set your price based on number of cars sold and you scaled it up that way, then we are willing to pay more for your offering. So, as part of the output of the research, we wanted to look at how customers' willingness to pay varied based on the old pricing model, which was based on number of sites, and based on the new pricing model based on number of cars sold. And what you can see in the left-hand chart here is the relationship between willingness to pay and site-based pricing wasn't really a very good close relationship. On the other hand, if you look at willingness to pay based on number of cars sold, there was a direct relationship between willingness to pay and number of cars sold. So again, basically customers are saying they are willing to pay more for this software package if it is priced based on number of cars sold. Now, of course, this entails risks. Are you willing to set your price based on number of cars sold, particularly coming out of the Great Recession? So what we did, using the pricing model that we had created, we took the customer's data from their historic 10 years, we used 10 years of their history and applied that within the model to look at how customers behaved and what the business outcome would be for outcome-based pricing versus site pricing. What is the differential revenue, a 10-year retrospective? And as you can see from the years that were analyzed, we went directly back across the Great Recession to see what the impact would be. So what we could see is going back to 2004, during the good times, before the recession hit, in every single year, the outcome-based pricing outperformed site-based pricing. Even at the worst point of the Great Recession, that would be in the years 2008, 2009, 2010, the outcome-based pricing outperformed site-based pricing in 2 out of 3 of those years. And finally, coming back out of the Great Recession, the willingness to pay grew again. So the point is that when we use the economic model that we had built based on customer research, and we tested outcome-based pricing versus site pricing, going back across the Great Recession, it was hands down a better approach to pricing.
Let's sum up on outcome-based pricing. First, as I mentioned earlier, outcome-based pricing is a subset of value-based pricing, has all the same advantages and disadvantages applied to a single customer. I recommend you visit the value-based pricing video on this channel. With outcome-based pricing, however, the big decision is whether this is a customer you want to get in bed with. 3. If you do, then this is the pricing strategy for strategic partnerships because you're both pursuing a common outcome that is measurable. And 4, the key question is how to manage your downside risk, both real and perceived. Real is what might be the consequences, for example, in an economic downturn. Perceived is how do we persuade our management internally that this might be a course of action worth at least investigating, if not pursuing. Thanks for joining me on my channel. If there's a topic you want me to look into, please let me know in the comments. Of course, like and subscribe. For more, click on one of these options to dive deeper into the fascinating world of value and pricing secrets.